You're listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks, your source for centered and focused play therapy coaching.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Podcast, where you get a master class in child-centered play therapy and practical support and application for your work with children and their families. In today's episode, I am reading another section from one of the seminal works in our field, from The Art of the Relationship by Garry Landreth. But before we get into that, I want to share a very, very special email that I received. And I know that every week I get emails from all over the world and listeners reach out and I hear stories and wins and celebrations and I get questions. And it dawns on me every once in a while that some of those should be shared with you because you all only know your experience. And I get the privilege of having people from everywhere share with me their experiences. So I want to share an experience that was emailed to me this week by Jonathan. And he tells me that he listens to me every day, so he feels like he knows me really well, which so many of you say that, which is so special to me. That's why I love podcasting. I feel like I know you all as well, and I truly mean that. So he says, I wanted to share a funny story. My son and I ride bikes every week when he comes to my house, and as we were riding to our favorite donut shop, I heard him giving his stuffed animal cat choices. He gave the cat the choice to ride on the front of the bike or gave the cat the choice to ride under his arm as he rode his bike. I laughed out loud as I heard him giving the cat choices because the idea of choices has become such a staple in his life. So Jonathan, thank you for emailing me that, first of all. Second of all, that is one of what I consider to be the greatest testaments to the power of the child-centered language. Because children become so accustomed to the predictability and the consistency and the verbiage that they adopt it as their own. So kids will use choices, and kids will reflect feelings, and kids will use encouragement phrases. And it becomes very apparent that their little sponge selves have soaked in all the things that we say. And this happens with our children and with children in the playroom. When we are consistent using child-centered language, it becomes a very staple in the child's life. And that just makes my heart smile. And I'm so glad that you emailed me that, Jonathan, thank you. If you all have stories like that, I'd love to hear from you as well. So you can always reach me at Brenna@thekidcounselor.com. I was actually speaking with a coaching participant a couple weeks ago, and she told me that she had emailed me, and I was like, I don't think I've gotten anything from you. And I said, just confirm that you have my email address right. And she goes, I listened to your podcast. I know your email address by heart because you always say it. And I was like, oh, okay. I suppose you have heard that like 1,000 times at this point. So anyway, you know Brenna at the Kid Counselor, but for those of you who are new that maybe have not listened to every episode, you can always email me. I'd love to hear from you. That's Brenna with 2 N's at thekidcounselor.com. Okay, so let's dive into this text today. And I'm reading from The Art of the Relationship. I'm in the chapter, The Meaning of Play. And I'm reading on page 23 and 24. And we're going to actually, I think, get some really, really helpful insight. This is not something that is discussed often. This is not something that I've actually found in other CCPT texts. I feel like this might actually be unique to this book. And it is talking about Moustakas' research, which we always reference Moustakas when we talk about the history of child-centered play therapy. So Moustakas is a prominent figure in the child-centered history, but I don't know that this research is quoted very often and the findings of this research. So I'm going to read the difference in play of more adjusted versus more maladjusted children. And I think this will be really insightful and helpful for everyone. So I'm starting on page 23. The play of adjusted and maladjusted children, as described by Moustakas, differs in several areas. Adjusted children are conversational and prone to discuss their world as it exists for them, whereas some maladjusted children may remain completely silent in their first few play sessions, speaking only with great difficulty to the therapist. Other maladjusted children may keep up a rapid-fire flow of questions and conversations during the first sessions. The initial reactions of maladjusted children are cautious and deliberate, Adjusted children are free and spontaneous in their play. All right, so there's more, but I want to pause there and tease this apart a little bit. Okay, so I know that every single one of you that has been doing child-centered play therapy for any length of time, I know you immediately thought of kids that have come in and barely said a word to you. And you've thought of kids that have come in and have just been blabbermouths. Okay, we know based on Moustakas' research that indicates high levels of maladjustment. More adjusted children, as it says, are, quote, conversational and prone to discuss their world as it exists for them. So when you have a child that comes in and is conversational and talkative and engages with you as part of their play, you know that indicates higher levels of adjustment. And then in contrast, if you have very, very silent kids or very, very talkative kids, and they're just kind of spitfiring things out, you know that indicates maladjustment. The initial reactions of maladjusted children are cautious and deliberate, but adjusted children are free and spontaneous. You can see the kids that don't want to do anything, that are very timid, that have all kinds of hesitance, that are very thoughtful with what they do and when and why. And then you see when more adjusted kids come in, they just kind of go with the flow and they're more free and spontaneous. We see this all the time, but I don't think we've ever been able to recognize it as a term of adjustment or maladjustment. So I actually think this is super helpful. Okay, I'm going to continue. Adjusted children will examine the whole play setting and use a large variety of play materials, in contrast to maladjusted children who use a few toys and play in a small area. Okay, so let's think about this. We have kids that come in and they stand in one spot, they sit in one spot, they don't get up, they only engage with one toy. Sometimes they don't get engaged with any toys. They limit their movement, they limit their exploration of the room. And then you have kids that come in and they check out everything and they pick everything up. And we talk about the exploratory play that takes place in the first few weeks, right? Adjusted children are going to use all kinds of things and explore and investigate and see what's in there. More maladjusted kids are going to be very limited in the toys and the area in which they play. So fascinating. Let me continue. Okay, whoa, this is a big one. Maladjusted children often want to be told what to do and what not to do. And I know at least one child just popped into your head because we always have that kid that goes, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. Well, I'm bored. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, can you just ask me questions? Well, what game do you want to play? Well, they want to be given expectations. They want to be told what to do and what not to do. However, continuing, adjusted children use various strategies to discover their responsibilities and limitations in the therapeutic relationship. So a more adjusted child is going to not necessarily be fully comfortable with all the power and responsibility, yet they will use various strategies to figure all of that out. Essentially coping, right? Okay, continuing. When bothered or annoyed, adjusted children use a concrete way to bring out their problem. Maladjusted children are more likely to express their feelings symbolically with paints, clay, sand, or water. Really interesting. Continuing, maladjusted children are often aggressive and want to destroy the play materials and sometimes the therapist. So think about your most aggressive children, the most destructive children, likely the most maladjusted. Aggression also is seen in adjusted children, but it is clearly expressed without massive destruction, and responsibility is accepted for the expression. So be very careful with this, because I've learned the hard way that sometimes we talk about things and it's interpreted as very black and white and concrete, and people kind of go in one direction with it and there isn't really any wiggle room or gray. So I don't want you to think, okay, if a kid's aggressive, they're maladjusted. Let's be really clear. It says aggression is also seen in adjusted children, so that cannot be the deciding factor of whether or not you determine the child is more adjusted or maladjusted. But aggression in adjusted children is clearly expressed without massive destruction. So they can be aggressive without destroying things, and they take responsibility for the expression. Adjusted children are not so serious and intense in their feelings about themselves, the therapist, or their play, as are maladjusted children. So let's talk about that for a second. Think about kids that pop into your head that are really serious, really intense. Everything is a big deal. Everything has an aura to it that's just big and heavy and just there's a lot of weight to it. Those are the less adjusted children. But adjusted children are less intense, less serious, and their play, their interaction with the therapist, and their feelings about themselves are just lighter. And we have those kinds of kids as well. So you can clearly see the difference. Okay, and then to sum this up, Moustakas concluded from his experiences with adjusted and maladjusted children that all children, irrespective of the quality of their adjustment, express similar types of negative attitudes. Okay, so this is very interesting because to this point, we've been seeing the differences and how it manifests itself in sessions. So now we have a little bit of a framework, if you will, or an assessment guide to recognize, okay, that is more maladjusted behavior than adjusted behavior, right? So that will give us some perspective and awareness of what's happening with kids in our sessions. But now Moustakas is saying all children, irrespective of the quality of their adjustment, express similar types of negative attitudes. Continuing, the difference between well-adjusted and maladjusted children lies not primarily in the type of negative attitudes they demonstrate, but rather in the quantity and intensity of such attitudes. Aha. So it's a level issue, not a presence issue. In other words, we're going to see negative attitudes across every child that comes into our playrooms. So it's not in the fact that it exists, it's in the quantity, so how many of them, and the intensity, the degree of these attitudes. Continuing, adjusted children express negative attitudes less often and with more focus and direction. Maladjusted children express negative attitudes frequently and intensely with less focus and direction. I find this so fascinating. This is the greatness of going back to early works where it all began. You know, these books are at this point, gosh, I mean, many of them are from the 80s and 90s. So, I mean, we're literally looking at 30 to 40 years old here. But look at the nuggets and gems that we're pulling out of here. This is the importance of really, truly understanding at its early origin the basic components of child-centered play therapy and all of the nuances and facets therein. Because yes, skills matter, but so does our awareness and recognition of adjustment in children and maladjustment in children. And we get that straight out of Art of the Relationship. So, all right, y'all, we are soon to be wrapping up our summer school series. So there are going to be a few more, but in the next few weeks, we will be wrapping up that. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for letting me know that it's been really helpful. And I'm so encouraged that so many of you are purchasing these books and adding them to your library and finding value in these. We have to go back to the basics so that we don't lose what we're supposed to be doing. So I'm really glad that this has resonated with all of you. I'm super grateful for you. Love y'all so much. Couple of housekeeping things. Make plans to be in Atlanta in October if you haven't already. So Friday night in Atlanta, we're going to have a huge meetup. I would love, love, love to have you there. I have people coming from all over the country, even Alaska. So that's pretty far away. So if you're not as far as Alaska, you have no excuse. So please make plans to do that. We would love to have you there. I have tons more training planned and that I'm currently working on with Corewell. So stay tuned for more CEU opportunities. And as always, I love your feedback. So if you would like more of something, less of something, if you have some ideas, if you want to throw something out, I would love to hear your thoughts. So please reach out. And that's the way that I make sure that I'm staying in tune with what y'all need and want. You know how much I love you. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and resources, please go to www.playtherapypodcast.com.